Hello, Tech Edinam fans. The robot framework has some inbuilt variables. In this video, we are going to explore those variables. So let's go to our Chrome and open this link to the inbuilt variables in the robot framework documentation. As you can see, we have the built-in variables, and these ones are the operating system variables. Typically, I have used this one and this. So this one gives you the absolute path to the file which is being executed. So let's see, an absolute path to the directory where the test data file is located. This variable is case sensitive, meaning you have to write it exactly the way it is. We are going to be using this in the future, the teardown. And we have the Boolean variables as well. When we say Boolean, it is true or false. Usually Boolean have two values, true or false. So these are them. We have the true, false, and there's another one, none. I would show you what the none does later. And these variables are case insensitive. So for example, true with capital T and true with small t are equivalent. So you can have everything in block letters or in small letters. They are equivalent. But this one has to be this, all in block letters. And we also have the space and the empty variables. And it is usually simple to explain in an example. So all these I am going to explain in the video. So I'm just showing you where you can locate these inbuilt variables in case you need them. So let's go to PyCharm. Let's see how those variables are used. So this is where we left off. We can just close these ones and let's just create a folder in the main directory. Let's say built-in variables, and then we can create a file within that directory. Let's say built-in variables.robot, and then let's bring in, as usual, our Selenium library. And then our test cases. So let's say built-in variables, and then we just give it the documentation, and then let's see, exploring the built-in variables. Yes, so now we have the test case. Now let's start with the current directory variable, and this is how it is written. And straight away, since it's an inbuilt variable, it's already available to us. So now we are logging the value of this variable. So let's see what this variable contains. So let's navigate into the built-in variables folder. So we can now run that file. So let us run the, yes, we don't have to use the open browser because we are not opening any browser. We are just logging this. So and because I did not specify the path to the logs, it usually logs, it creates the output files in the same folder where the test suite was. So this built-in variables dot robot is in the built-in variables directory, and we run it from this directory. So by default, the three output files are placed in the built-in variables folder. So now let's open this and see what. Yes, so as you can see, we are logging the content of the code dir variable, and this is it. It has logged the absolute path to where the file is. So it says my name, documents, robot framework course, built-in variables, the built-in variable. So this is the folder. So that is how to get the path, the absolute path to the file where you are, the location where that test suite is located. So now let's explore the other variables as well. Let us create another test case. Let's say creating variables, and then let's give it documentation, and let's say local variables in test cases. So previously we have seen local variables where we used to store the values from some some keywords like the get length, and then the get web elements, and then the get element count. So like this, these ones return values. So all we have to do is create our own variable and just store them, and that is it. But how do we actually create our own variables and put values into them? So let's see how that is done. We have a keyword known as set variable that takes a value. So let's say John. Then we can have another one, set variable, let's say Doe. But these are just the values. The John and the Doe are just values. So set variable John, set variable Doe. We have to store it somewhere. So all we have to do is create, let's say this should be first name, and give it the tab a few times, and then last name, then let's tab a few times. Yeah, so all we are saying is create this variable first name and put John into it, and then create the last name variable and put Doe into it. So let's say we want the full name John Doe, but now we have the first name separate and the last name separate. So what do? We want to join the John and the Doe. So we have to concatenate it, and there is a handy keyword for that. In robot framework, it is catenate. This is the keyword catenate, and all we have to do is specify the first name variable and the last name variable. Then let's run the file again and see what happens. Yeah, so they passed. Yeah, so now we have the second test case. So we have the first name as John, and then the last name as Doe, and then let's see the catenate. This is the documentation for the catenate keyword itself. We have catenate the given items together and returns the resulted string. It has returned the string, but we are not storing it. Yeah, this catenate returns the value when these two have been joined, but we are not storing that value. So we can again create another variable, let's say full name. And now let's run the file again and see. Yes, so now we have the full name variable. It says John Doe, full name John Doe. But this concatenate does not only take the variables you want to concatenate, it takes another, let's say, argument. That is the separator. The separator is, by default, the separator is the space. But what if you want other characters? You can specify it as well. But first, let's go with the space. By default, the space is only one space. So John and then space Doe. So when we go to the log, we see there is only one space over here. So there's a way to increase the spaces. So let's go back to PyCharm. So before the items you want to concatenate, it takes an argument, a separator argument. So separator equal to sign, and then it takes the space. We have a variable space. That is it. So we have a variable space, but at this point we have not really done anything different. So we are telling it that take an argument known as space. There's a variable space. So if you want to increase the space, let's say by 10, so like we have the John, we have the Doe, you want to see 10 spaces between the John and the Doe. So all you have to do is, I want to see the space 10 times. So if it is 10 times, let's try 100 and see. Yes, so full name, concatenate, separator, 100, the first name and the last name. Let's try 10. Yeah, so it has reduced. Let's try 1,000 and see. The Doe has disappeared. So that is how to concatenate two variables together. This is not necessary if you don't want this one. So there are other separators you can use besides the space, because the space is the default. So if you don't want to use the space, there are other separators you can use as well. So let's go to the built-in keywords in Robots Framework and have a look. So we have the concatenate over here, and this is what we did the first time. And now we have the separator equal to dash dash dash. So let's try it and see. It says we have the hello and the world, and it's combining both with the dash 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 separator, and this is the output. And if the separator is empty, if you bring the separator with nothing here, then it removes the default space. So let's try that and see. So let's remove the space. Let's see. Oh, I've closed the Yes, it has removed the space. So now let's go and supply dash 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 a few times, and let's run that and see. Yes, so John with a few hyphens and then a do. And then next up, besides using the set variable, and these are all, this is a local variable. The first name is a local variable, last name local variable, and the full name local variable as well. It's local because you cannot access the content of these variables outside the creating variables test case. So let's continue. There's another keyword to use, set local variable. And as you can see, it takes a default at least one argument. That's the name of the variable. Let's say salary. And then you can supply the amount to it. Let's say 900 euros. And then there's another one. So this is set local variable. We now have set global variable. And then we have, let's say, occupation. And then the value, test automation engineer. So let's see. Let's run the file again. Yeah, so we have the salary to be 900 euros, and then we have the occupation to be TA engineer. Now let's try and so now that we've created the variables, let's try accessing these variables, the values in these variables. Let's see what we get. So let's say accessing the global variables. So let's say, let's log the salary, for instance. And straight away you can see it's underlined. But let's log the occupation. Yes, because the salary is a local variable. It's only local to the creating variables test case. So it cannot be accessed outside the create variables. Let's see the full name as well. Full name. Yeah, so anytime you see a red line under a variable or a keyword, then maybe you have not imported it yet, or that variable is a local variable to a test case. So when we run it, surely there's going to be an error. Variable salary not found because it is local. Then let's see. Let's change this to global. And straight away the red line disappears. So let's run it again. Now it says variable full name not found. So those are the user variables and the built-in variables. We are going to be using the true or false and the none and the empty later. But for now, this is the introduction to the built-in variables and the user-defined variables as well. Thank you for watching this video. Do not forget to subscribe, like, and share because more content is coming. Thank you.